Hey everyone, welcome to day 4 of our pledge drive. I'm Paula Brown, President of Americans for Homeopathy Choice, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Now, we did record this session because we are interviewing 2 people from the UK where the time zones would not have worked, and so we're going to live stream this for you guys on Thursday. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to kind of see what we have in store for today. So our theme this year is homeopathy for preparedness, ready and resilient. We've had an awesome week so far, and we've enjoyed kind of bringing you guys all of this valuable information while also updating you on our advocacy work, okay? So our goal for our pledge drive is 45,000, and we kind of inched up just a little bit from yesterday, which we are so thankful for those donations. So thankful. Our goal is to get to 45,000 by the end of the week. We actually were contacted by so many people just asking questions on how they can help. And right now we are really, really needing to reach that goal. I know times are tough, and I know that asking people to donate is such a difficult thing for families right now to support, but just donate with whatever you can, because we will potentize that and make it so that we can move forward with our work. And we are making some really exciting progress, especially this coming year. So a big thank you to our generous sponsors that are listed here. I'm so thankful for everything they're doing. Homeopathy World, National Center for Homeopathy, American Academy of Clinical Homeopathy, International Academy of Classical Homeopathy, Resilience Naturopathic, Hahnemann Labs, Homeopathy Haven, Eden Foods, Taproots, Energique, and Lytle. We are so thankful for all of your support. So thank you so much. And then today we're having a special session because we are speaking to Chris and Jackie, and they're part of Whole Health Ag, and they're giving us an offer. If you use the coupon code AFHC50, you're going to get 50 pounds, which is approximately $64 off of their 2 foundation courses, which is a really great deal. And so we're really thankful for them offering this to you guys. I've taken some of their classes before. They're fantastic. So, and then a big thank you to today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Pharma, Preserving the Future of Homeopathy. We are so thankful for all the support they give us. They not only, support us because they've donated kits to us, which we sell in our shop, but he also offers a lot of technical support as we're writing bill or legislation language. We like to go to various manufacturers for feedback, and Robert Mello from Ohm has always been really supportive. He's such an asset to the homeopathy community. We're very lucky to have him. A big shout out to Washington Homeopathics. Remember that you can get a discount every time you shop with them all year round, not just during this pledge drive, and that's using the coupon code AFHC 2024. You're going to get 5% off, and then you also throw a little donation towards us. So we're very thankful for any time you can shop with them. And then day 4, we have a raffle. I'm actually recording this on the day of our pledge drive, just a few hours before I'm supposed to post it. So I really hope my internet uploads is fast enough. But on day 4, we're giving you guys some pretty awesome products that relate to homeopathy for animals. So we have a practical Materia Medica for farmers by Whole Health Ag and a practical repertory for farmers by Whole Health Ag. 2 awesome books. I actually don't have these books, and trust me, I feel like I have every animal book on homeopathy possible, especially if it's like a farm animal. So I'm going to be ordering these myself. A sweater. We're giving you this fun apron for you to put your chicken eggs in there. If you don't have chickens, get them, because this is a wonderful way to be self-sufficient and to be ready and resilient, and to kind of have your own chickens. And then we give you several remedies that are excellent for different animals, when they might encounter different challenges, different injuries and whatnot. Okay, and then remember that we would love for you to visit our shop, Americans for Homeopathy Choice. That's our store. Go to homeopathychoice.org/store, and all week long you can order t-shirts and use a coupon code PREPARE2024, and you get 10% off of our products during checkout. And this is our featured item for the day. I'm a mommypath. What's your superpower? That's kind of a little term that I've trademarked for my own business, but I donated the use of the mommypath term to our shop here at Homeopathy Choice, because I would love to do anything we can to kind of help us move forward. So Okay, and then if you visit our store, there's a bunch of other products that you can look at. That coupon works for the entire shop, so we're very thankful for being able to offer that to you. And then we've spoken to Sue Meyer, Camilla Scher. Yesterday was me and Michelle that were speaking, and today is Jackie Pierce-Dickens and Chris Aukland, and we are talking about animals and homeopathy from hooves to hens. And so we're going to jump into that discussion just a moment here. And then finally, tomorrow, our last day, will be a live show with Harula Batista. Very excited to have her and looking forward to our discussion about homeopathy, better than antibiotics. It's for infections. Okay, so let me introduce our speakers for today. We have Jackie. That's the gal over there on the left, and she's the director and the executive chief of Whole Health Agriculture. She is passionate about supporting and getting recognition for farmers who aim to achieve herd health through a holistic approach. An experienced facilitator and trainer, she works closely with holistic vets Chris Aukland to develop and deliver WHAGs, that's kind of their acronym, Whole Health Ag, WHAGs, livestock programs, as well as being responsible for the operational management of the organization. And then Chris Aukland, MRCVS, that's the acronym for being a vet in the UK. He's the director and head of livestock programs at Whole Health Ag. He's a veterinary surgeon based in East Sussex. I've actually been able to visit him and his family before in person. It's been really fun. He has been using an integrated holistic approach to his veterinary work over 30 years and leads WHAG's livestock health programs, which aim to educate and support farmers to integrate natural health approaches into their herd. So without further ado, let's jump into that interview. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's pledge drive. As we said, it was going to be recorded because we have a couple of people from across the pond who have very different time zones. And so this is going to work best for us to do it that way. So let me bring them on right now. Go ahead, Chris Aukland and Jackie, please go ahead and turn on your cameras. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very excited. I've actually been able to kind of watch your work at Whole Health Ag grow from the beginning, and so proud of all the amazing information and content you guys put out there. So thank you for being here to talk about animals and homeopathy from hooves to hens. Very good. So,
pleasure. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's begin with the discussion. So, you know, a lot of us may or may not live on some land. We may or may not have goats, but I know a lot of us might have chickens, or we're interested in getting chickens. And so you've kind of selected a few animals to discuss that produce food is the idea to help us with our resilience, you know, and homeopathy has been a huge part of my little homestead. And so, yeah, let's jump in. How do you guys want to start?
I think the most important thing to start with is the whole idea of resilience in the first place, because I know whatever specifics you're going to use in terms of giving one remedy for this problem or that problem, if you backtrack it, those problems only ever really started when something was going out of balance. And in terms of the work we do with all our farmers, we have a very clear model where we work at looking at the whole of the farm of the year, every aspect of the animal's life from birth all the way through to death, and then recognizing that there's always going to be challenges on any farm or any small holding all the way along the line. And the better you understand the scope of those challenges, the better prepared you're going to be able to deal with them when they come along. Jackie, does that make sense in terms of how we approach things?
Yeah, so what we do is we teach our, we have a membership base, as you know, Paola, with farmers actually now from all over the world, including the US. And we teach farmers from anywhere, no matter what their system, to think ahead, plan ahead, and plan preventatively. So traditionally, of course, you think of homeopathy, you think you've got a problem, and then you try and find a remedy for it. Well, Chris and I have been teaching farmers combined, I think, for 50 years. And over those years, we realized it's really difficult if you're a farmer and you've got an emergency and you're trying to find the right remedy for a problem in a drafty barn at 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're trying to look at your books. So we went right back, dialed it right back, and decided, okay, taking the principle of homeoprophylaxis, which you may know in terms of, for instance, giving nosodes to prevent disease, could we do that with other remedies? And we discovered we could. So this is what we went on to develop. So our entire platform is based on prevention and early intervention, which is just before the stress. And then the less often that the farmer or anybody else finds themselves in what we call the treatment zone, trying to find the right remedy match, the better. So that is sort of the principle on which we teach everything really now.
That's fantastic. And so I much prefer prevention. I would much rather have a healthy animal that is just maintaining health. And it's amazing how stress can really, I mean, as humans, we just get abused, don't we? And we just kind of keep getting abused and we just brush it aside and we soldier on. But animals don't do that so well. If they're stressed, they're going to get sick and they're going to let you know, and they don't just soldier on and keep coping too well.
Fair comment, absolutely. And the beauty of the approach that one can start to take with the whole health way of looking at your farm is that you can predict when these stresses are going to occur, and you can get strategies to then to deal with things. There's always going to be occasions when you really do need some high level input, sort of veterinary input typically. So we call that the red level. And so it's not that you don't do that, you just put that in its place. So if something is really not well and you need to call your local veterinary surgery, then always recommend people to do that. Equally, we also know that a lot of these problems start when the husbandry is not working well, so we encourage people to relook at their husbandry. So you do that top bit and that bottom bit. What we recognise also, there's this middle bit, what we call the amber level, where you can start to look
for Americans, yellow.
Yellow,
okay.
yeah. So red level for when it's serious and you need to call the local veterinary practice. Green for when it's the husbandry, and I'll call it yellow if you like, for when you're looking at the things that you can do with natural medicines in one way or another. And the catchphrase we use is the better you do the green and the yellow, the less time you spend in the red.
That's right.
It's that simple.
Right.
So if you can work out what your year cycle is going to be like, and you start to predict these different things, and you get your husbandry working well, and a bunch of different sort of natural medicines, herbs and homeopathy, then you alleviate a lot of the problems. You stop them even before they begin, really.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And our focus is always on stress, because a stressed animal is a sick animal, and the stress for an animal, we take things at any farm, and it doesn't even matter if we're just talking about your chickens, even if you've got a few chickens or a goat. It's what we do routinely to those animals that they perceive as a stress, and seeing it from their perspective and thinking, okay, what can I do to alleviate that? So for an animal, any change is a stress. The weather can be a stress. A new person coming and doing an intervention can be a stress. Moving them to a new part of the paddock, or it's a stress for an animal. Change of diet, it's a stress. So we sort of break down the stresses into the types of challenges that that animal's going to meet, and then come up with remedies appropriately and preventatively for each of those.
That's right. That's right. I like that. And I think that is the big message is humans soldier on, your animals don't. So homeopathy is really perfect for this discussion, because homeopathy requires so much observation and awareness. And that's how you identify these stresses. So, okay, so let's what's the first kind of item you guys wanted to discuss then? I mean, I guess that was the first item. The second item then.
Okay, so it's all about this idea of building resilience. So keep your husbandry good, keep your approach to breeding schemes that you might have for your animals good, because if you're trying to breed the wrong line of animals that aren't appropriate for that environment, you're asking for problems in the first place. So if you can identify what's a good type of animal to have in that environment, that'll make a huge difference right from the start. Then in terms of your husbandry, how you look after them, the housing, the feeding, again, work on getting those things right. Also recognise that within that, there are things that you can do that help alleviate problems. So for example, if you're changing the food system and it's going from maybe, in the winter where you kept them housed, and it's going out to maybe to the fresh new pasture, that is going to be a bit of a stress to the system. So you can use remedies to come in there to support the liver working better and the animal sort of digesting the food better, so it's going to have less of an impact.
Because they were going from kind of dry feed in the winter in the barn to that fresh, lush
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
grasses.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So you can get a bunch of diseases that can develop as a consequence of that. And again, you don't want to wait till you got that disease problem. You want to think ahead of the game and think of remedies that are going to be useful to support them as they go through that sort of challenge of this new food coming in. So that's another example. Weather, that's something we can't avoid. And sometimes it's too cold and sometimes it's too hot. And that's just a fact of life. What we can do is improve the animal's ability to deal with it. So, for example, do you want me to name specific remedies here, Paola?
Very much.
Yeah. Yes, much. Okay. So I'm just going to backtrack then. So if we're looking at specific remedy examples, when we have that change of diet, the remedy Nux vomica is a fantastic remedy to use when you're anticipating that change, because it helps with detox, it helps the liver support, and it helps the digestive system in all sorts of ways. And farmers find that when they use Nux vomica around the time of the dietary change from poor diet to rich diet, it makes a huge difference, and they don't tend to get so many problems.
So are you
Whether
giving this preventatively, like when you are releasing them before they actually, interesting. So that's kind of new for me.
Yeah,
well, this is
because
So-
if you think about it, you are warning the vital force. There's a challenge coming up. Here's the information you need. It's going to knock you off balance. Here's the information you need so you don't get knocked off balance.
So
Yeah.
what are we doing? One dose, 30C, like what's...
It could be 30, could be 200 typically, and you'd probably give a dose into the drinking water. That's the commonest way to give it to livestock. It's a simple way of approaching it. There are many other ways as well, but you find the simplest, gentlest method that works for you. So if you put it in the water, when they go backwards and forwards to the water, they get several doses. So you might do it for 2-3 days, something like that, during the transition period, and then you see where you go. Now, obviously, that type of group treatment, you're not individualizing per animal.
Right.
And if you've got, I don't know, half a dozen sheep, then well, maybe you do know each animal individually. If you've got 1,000 sheep, it's hard to know each animal individually. So you flock treat them and treat the whole lot as a group, and farmers find that it's much more practical to do it that way. Similarly, with the weather type examples, you could then look at very hot weather, and the commonest remedy we tend to use is belladonna. Which, as we know, is a fantastic remedy for heat stroke, headaches brought on by too much sun exposure, and so forth. And for livestock, they can go down with a whole bunch of problems. Again, you can wait till you've got those problems and try and treat those problems, by which time the animal's under a huge amount of compromise and stress. Or you've watched the weather forecast, you know that weather's coming along, and then you put in the belladonna in the water, homeopathically, maybe 30C, maybe 200, and do that for a day or so. That'll get them ready to deal with this oncoming challenge of the big direct change in temperature to doing too hot.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Oh, go ahead, finish your thought.
Similarly, in the winter, you find the temperature drop down. If you've got those cold, dry northeasterly winds and they really cut right through you, well, the livestock experiencing the same thing. And the classic remedy is aconite. Again, in homeopathic potency, and that will again remind the animal's ability to deal with the shock of that big change to a very cold temperature. And what we find, you get less incidence of, say, pneumonia when you do that. So you don't wait till you got the pneumonia problem. You give something preventively, and you find that improves the resilience to deal with this thing ahead of the challenge.
You know, this reminds me of my dog. When we were living in Texas, right now I'm in Idaho as we're recording this, but when we were living in Texas, I know tick and flea season comes with the spring weather, with the fall rains, and that's when we have fleas, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And I tried all these remedies. I tried Pulex, I tried all these remedies to prevent the fleas, and actually what ended up helping the most was simple lead him, because as he was getting bit, his body became more resilient. And so then when the fall season came, I actually started giving it to him like a couple times a week preventatively because I knew it was coming, and it was my best season without fleas.
Yeah, you got the idea. It's exactly what we're talking about. So it's a classic example of knowing the remedy you'd be expecting to give potentially, and using a little bit of intelligence and working things out creatively and thinking, okay, I'm not going to wait till they got the problem. I'm going to give that remedy to help them deal with it better.
Because for my dog, even though he was very healthy and very well, it's like once the fleas were there and causing all the problem, it was really hard to get them under control.
Yeah. And you can look at that whole year cycle. And what we encourage farmers to do when we're teaching them is to start to produce a problem list of all the problems they know they tend to typically get historically on that farm, or they might be anticipating getting, to plot them around the different times of the year. So then they're prepared with their map, if you like, and then think, okay, what would they expect to maybe need to be doing in these different situations? And then create remedy protocols ahead of the game to deal with those things in a preventative way by, as Jackie says, to educate the vital force so it's better prepared to deal with the problem should it come along.
Okay, so here's a few things I would say. If you don't have any animals and you've been like flirting with the idea of getting chickens, chickens are so easy. What I would do is I would go to friends who have chickens and say, okay, let's think about the calendar year. What are the biggest challenges you face with chickens over a year, and write those down. So then okay, I'm going to anticipate these issues, and start from like having chicks, like little chicks as you're growing them, to like the full-grown hens. Just ask questions and do those interviews. Now, I do want to ask a couple of questions. Okay, first of all, to add them to the water, this is what I do, and you tell me if I should modify this. I will get like a mason jar, and I'll put the remedy like at home inside my kitchen. I'll drop the remedy in there, and I'll start shaking it, and I'll walk out to the water trough, and then I'll get the hose, and the water trough has water in it, but I'll get the hose, and I'll shoot the hose into the mason jar cup, the jar, and it'll start kind of swishing in and out of the cup, and it starts falling into and I make this big mess. My hands are all in it, and I'm probably getting the remedy, a dose of it, and then I put it in there, and then, like let's say I was using the belladonna for heat. Would I just leave it in there and kind of forget about it? Because the sun will probably, neutralize the remedy in the water over. Like, I don't have to boil the trough after a week or anything, right? Because they say like at home, you're supposed to boil your glass of water or whatever once you're done using the remedy water. And so does the sun just kind of, over time, UV rays kind of cancel out the remedies? You don't need to worry about it?
I wouldn't worry too much about that, Paula. I totally get where you're coming from. And there are all sorts. I think we've probably broken every rule when it comes to, homeopathic prescribing. I mean, I've been a homeopath for nearly 20 years. Chris has been a homeopathic vet for even longer. I wouldn't worry too much with that. And we certainly find with the farmers that you don't get that.
It's fine.
There's this myth that the vital force can be confused. Well, I think the vital force will probably tell us a few things or two. And I don't really see how, when you think of what our innate intelligence is dealing with on a moment by nano moment, basis, I think having, a remedy that it might not necessarily need at that particular time is less likely to confuse it than several other things.
Right. Animals are more simple, I would say. Humans are a little bit more complex.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And I think that the thing is that if you're out, if your water's exposed, yes, you're getting the radiation from the sun. So it's, for us, it's like if that problem is still there, or you're trying to prevent that problem, or that situation is still there, like if the weather is persisting, you would just continue to gently drip that remedy in, over time. And then as your animals, build up their resilience to that particular problem, so their susceptibility is getting lowered, you would find that you would need to do that less often. That farmers kind of develop an understanding of this and just get to judge it very, finely, really, over time.
Okay, so now let's go back to the weather situation. Okay, it's the beginning of summer, and it's the first really hot day is coming. So then I would go out and I would do the belladonna. But the hot day is going to stay all summer long because we get really hot here. It's going to be at least a month or two, let's say, of heat. So do you keep giving the belladonna, or do I just focus on the initial shock of the transition into summer?
Yeah, I think the initial shock is the big thing, and thereafter you might use it from time to time. We have this concept of what we call a healing curve. So if you imagine that normal is just going on a nice straight line, everything's absolutely fine, and that's how you want it to be. And then but the other situation now, we've got a problem. There's too much heat, and you're worried about sort of a heat stroke situation. So you come on the remedy. What tends to happen is the animal starts to improve. Now, sometimes you get that very elegant thing where you just give one remedy and you get that improvement. Other times you give one remedy, it improves a bit, gets a bit worse, you repeat it, improves a bit, gets worse, you repeat it, and so on. So you kind of track the progress by repeating the remedy. typically you find the frequency starts to get longer and longer and longer between having to give a remedy, and the flare up gets less and less. So that's a kind of a healing curve, we call it. We're very familiar with that. Now, if we look at it in terms of prevention, we kind of copy that model that we might use for when we're treating a problem, and we use it as a prevention protocol. So yes, it might be you do it daily for a bit, and then you might perhaps put it in weekly or twice weekly for a bit, and then you might decrease the frequency. Just as Jackie said, we're educating the vital force, and if it starts to get more resilient and we're able to deal with that problem, then that's fine. So for example, in the UK, we've been slowly having a bit of a warm weather through our summer. It's not as hot as your summers over there in the US, but it's slowly been getting hotter. And then we might suddenly have a day when it goes colder again, and it feels really cold. Now, if I look back at my calendar, what feels really cold now, actually, back in spring, that felt like a warm day. So if you think about that in terms of livestock, they become accustomed to this heat and they adapt. And what the remedies do is remind them how to adapt. Once they're adapted, they're probably less susceptible to this ongoing type of thing.
Gotcha.
You might get the occasional spike where again you might put the remedy in again.
Right, like in the with the aconite in the winter, sure, when the first cold front comes in, but then maybe there's a storm that is coming, and so now you're doing it preventively for those spikes or whatever. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So what we train the farmers to understand there are things like what is a maintaining cause and what is an exciting cause. And sometimes, a maintaining cause is something that you generally can't avoid, like prolonged dry period or prolonged wet weather, or the fact that your dairy herd's got to walk on stony tracks for a long way to get to the milking parlour. An exciting cause would be, like you just said, a sudden storm, or suddenly a dog running through your flock and terrifying them all. So it's once they start to sort of think about how to respond to things like that, and the more predictable that sort of challenge is, the easier it gets to get ahead with your remedies and think clearly. I mean, you illustrated that beautifully with your flea situation. So it had happened once, exciting cause, you get your fleas, and now you're thinking, flea season's coming up. The weather is a trigger, so again you've got that exciting cause, but this time, so you got in ahead and you got in early with your remedies, and that's exactly what we're talking about. It's no more difficult than that. The farmers get to routinely use their remedies in just the same ways that they would feed. So, we're feeding this during this season, or they're going to come into the barn, so you need to make these preparations. These are the remedies that we're going to give to help them adjust to coming in for the winter, that kind of thing. And just coming back to the stress remedies, because I don't think we've really covered those. We've got farmers who literally just focus on what we call the stress remedies. And these are, so aconite's one of them. So any change for an animal is an aconite situation, potentially. But there's a lovely combination, which is called AAA. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. So it's like a little choir. It's a little, it's not a choir exactly, because there are three. It's not a duet. It's a trio, is it? I'm rubbish at this.
It's a barbershop choir.
Yeah, one of those. So it's aconite, arsenicum, and arginate. And it covers three sort of issues that the animal's experiencing or potentially going to experience by any change or sudden stress. And that is fear, anticipation with arginate, because arginate's worried what's going to happen next. It's always thinking, oh God, something terrible is going to happen. What's that doing over there? Why is that changed? That bucket was blue yesterday, now it's red. And then arsenicum sees the world as a hostile place. And so it's sort of that whole anxiety around, in a very basic fundamental level, am I going to die here? Is the situation potentially going to kill me? And fears the worst. So, this sort of almost paranoia, the arsenicum animal. So it covers those beautifully. And then, of course, if you add ignatia into that, which is the emotional shock remedy, you've covered so many bases there.
Wait, did you say ignatia? Is that a fourth remedy?
Yeah, so we work quite closely with an organisation in New Zealand who supply the big farms in New Zealand with homeopathy, and the proprietor, who is a farmer herself, has discovered that if she adds Ignatia to AAA, then it's even better, if that makes sense, because it's covering emotional shock as well. Separation, or you going on holiday can be such a massive shock to an animal. They don't know you're coming back. If we're talking about a pet, or the vet coming and examining your animal can be a massive shock to them. So it just
let's think of some shocking situations. So you've got transportation. So when you get your little chicks in the mail that got shipped to you, AAA and Ignatia maybe, you've got just transportation, just if you're hauling, your goat or whatever, your dogs. Let me think what else. You've got, would you do that for change in diet? No.
Not so much changing diet, changing social grouping, and again, depends on the number of livestock you have. But quite often you have like young stock, you're growing up, and they get to a certain age, and then they're separated out into a separate different group. Now, from our point of view, it's really convenient because we're farming. But from the animal's point of view, they don't understand why they've suddenly been changed away from their.
So if you're removing one, do you give it to the flock that they're being incorporated into, or just to the one that was removed? Just all of them?
Both, I'd say, yeah. Same with standard weaning. So if you're taking the lamb away from its mother, shepherds consistently give us this feedback that when they've incorporated Ignatia into the regime before the weaning time or during the weaning time, they'll find that the weaning process is so much simpler. You just don't get the same level of stress and anxiety, so much noise, and they settle down very quickly. Whereas most people know without doing that, it can take 3 or 4 days sometimes before these really settle down or appear to settle down to a sort of quiet and normal level of existence.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And just moving on from that, we realize it's not just about emotionally supporting them. We know that during that time, that stress factor of being emotionally upset means that the whole vital force isn't working well. And I remember talking to one farmer once, we were talking about parasite management. And he said, well, one of my key strategies here is to use Ignatia around weaning time. I said, well, how does that affect it? He said, well, just the way you see it, Chris, is that by reducing the stress level, they're less susceptible to these parasites, which are on the posture. I thought, yeah, makes total sense. I completely agree with him. And so we repeated that story many a time. So paying attention to the stress levels when they happen means that they're going to be less vulnerable to the other challenges like parasites coming at a later stage.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And so it's funny how we like to put parasites in one box and weaning or whatever in another box, but it's really all connected. And that's what I think makes homeopathy so beautiful, is it pushes you to connect with your own body, for yourself and your children. It's like seeing, it's like seeing the world in 4D. Like we see the world in 3D, we think we see it, but when you add that fourth dimension of really observing keenly, I think that that's where the magic happens, and you're not actual magic. I mean, I shouldn't use that word around homeopathy because people are like, aha, no, but that's where like the beauty happens, and you really start seeing, life gets easier for everyone, right?
It really does, and I think also that that what farmers notice over time is that by addressing the stress, it's sort of the top of the pyramid, really. It never develops into as many things. So it's almost like a cascade. If you can knock the stress on the head, you just don't seem to get the other problems develop in quite the same way. So you're then not dealing with, oh my goodness, this one's got diarrhea. Oh my goodness, this one's got pneumonia. Oh my goodness, this one's got mastitis. Do you know what I mean? And you might find in your hens, I mean, we're not talking here. I mean, we deal a lot of the time with people who've got large numbers of animals, but even in a few hens, you don't really want them getting to the point where they start egg pecking, or the pecking order is there for a reason, picking on one another. And a lot of the time, I mean, science has finally caught up now that if you stress animals, they turn on each other or themselves. Again, you are taking that problem away from them, so they cope so much better with challenges, basically. So
You know,
it's really important.
there's this book that I actually got in the UK. It's The Secret Life of Cows.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a good book. And listen, it's probably one of my favorite books, which tells you where my priorities lie here. I love my cows, my animals. What I really liked about that book is that it really kind of, again, talking about that fourth dimension, it really helped you realize they're you know, they've got a lot on their minds in their own little world. But like what you said about you changed the bucket from the silver bucket to the blue bucket. I mean, this is a big deal to them, and they have their personalities, and I just loved the level of observation in that book. And they even have a little section on chickens, you know, and it's like we attribute personality to dogs, but we don't do that to other, especially farm animals, right? Or, you know, your chickens and stuff, but they actually really do have their little personalities. And as I read the chapter on chickens there, I remember when we don't have chickens quite right now, but we'll be getting them in the spring. But there was this one little chicken, her name was Daphne. And every time I would sit outside on the porch, she would see me leave the side door and I would go to the front porch. She would watch me and she'd follow me and she'd hop on my lap. None of the other chickens did that, you know? And so it's like we're deceiving ourselves if we believe that Daphne was the only chicken ever to have a personality. They all have personalities. That one in particular just seemed to resonate with me. You know what I mean? And so I noticed it, but it's happening over there too. And so it's just kind of really becoming aware. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break. I have Christopher here, and then let's get back into some more prevention type scenarios that you guys could recommend some remedies for. So go ahead and turn off your cameras, Jackie and Chris Aukland, and then. Okay, I hope you guys have been enjoying this this pledge drive so far. I'm excited to bring to you guys someone to do our homeopathy action team interview. But before I do that, I want to remind you guys that we are on day 4 of our pledge drive, and we are giving a raffle. We would love for you guys to please donate to us as we do our work at Americans for Homeopathy Choice. And right after we do this interview with our HAT member, I will be able to announce the winner for today's raffle prize. And then Christopher Hahn, you're welcome to turn on your camera and say hello to everyone.
Hello,
Hi.
everyone.
Yes, hello. Thank you for being with us, Chris. So Christopher, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to find homeopathy, why homeopathy is so important to you. Let's start there.
Well, I was very fortunate to meet homeopathy when I was 25 years old or so, which is 50 years ago.
Wow.
And I was also working with a homeopath who was, at that time, one of the most highly regarded docs in the country. That was Henry Williams in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And through him, I ended up taking the summer school that the National Center taught every summer. And again, it's just been my approach to medicine for 50 years.
That's amazing. I've never heard of Henry Williams before, but that's really neat.
And you know, I've seen it walk shingles out of me in 3 days, no pain, no lingering symptoms. I've had I'm a carpenter and I'm a farmer, so I've had, you know, numerous injuries along the way that have just been very mild as a result of what homeopathy can do.
That's amazing. Okay, I don't think I realized that you're a farmer. So this is kind of a fun session for you to be
It's a great session for me, yeah.
Good. I was worried. I was like, I hope he's not like needing to rush to something else, but that's so great that you got to be in here. That's awesome. And so one of the reasons we chose you, Christopher or Chris? Christopher. One of the reasons we selected you is because you're also on the HAT team, and you're based out of, you know, South China, which I've never heard of that area.
South China, Maine.
Oh, I see. Right, exactly. South China, Maine. So I've never heard of South China in Maine. So tell us a little bit about, because, you know, there's 2 ways that you can support Americans for Homeopathy Choice. And we really are working so hard, especially towards a bill and legislation, is by donating to us with your funds, with income, or your time. and you've certainly dedicated your time. So tell us a little bit about why you make the time, because we're all so busy, but you've sacrificed that time for us.
Well, I guess I feel I owe homeopathy something because of how helpful it's been to me for my entire adult life. It's just
Yeah.
that simple. And, you know, and I've got some knowledge, I got some time, I'm self-employed, so I can make it work.
So do you use, what kind of farming do you do? Are you still farming now?
All right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We grow vegetables, cut flowers, edible mushrooms. We have a dairy goat herd, and we grow mixed vegetables.
Oh, Christopher, we should become friends. That's so cool. And do you use homeopathy then with your plants and your animals?
I typically I use actually for the plants and animals. I use what I consider the next step beyond homeopathy, which is
Oh.
biodynamics.
Oh, yes. Yes. I actually have my preparations here, and I'm going to be putting my preparations on my compost pile here pretty soon. So, yeah, so I can appreciate that. That's awesome. So you're with biodynamics, you just tend to have fewer issues. That's wonderful. Well, Chris, I think it's awesome that you are here. I had no idea, but I think you're really cool. I had no idea that you did all these great things. So, I think it's fantastic that you're on the hat team. And have you had any experiences being on the hat team that, because I think a lot of people, Christopher, they feel like they're afraid to join the hat team because, like, some people say, I'm not good at selling, I'm not good at like convincing people. And I'm like, you don't have to convince people. It's really being your authentic self is kind of how we teach you.
Well, there's several components to being on the hat team. I mean, basically, what we try to do several things. One is you try to bring homeopathy to other people to help them be aware of it. We try to work with legislators and then our suppliers. And, you don't have to be a great public speaker to talk to a neighbor.
Right.
You just can share your experience. And when we have our yearly events like Homeopathy on the Hill, we have practice sessions for them. We have a script. And even someone who probably isn't very good at public speaking can probably communicate to a legislator basically why homeopathy is so important to them.
Yep. And what the issue at hand is.
Right.
And we put you through all the scenarios of like, okay, what if you don't know how to answer a question? Well, that's actually great because then it creates an opportunity for you to follow up with the answer. And then you can go to your state captain. Your state captain will help you get the answer. So that's really great. And how long have you been doing the hat team now?
Well, actually, this is just my second season. I mean,
Great.
I just finally looked into it and thought, okay, I can do something here.
That's amazing. Well, we so appreciate you. We appreciate you stepping up and volunteering to be here on the pledge drive with us. So that means a lot. And yeah, you're the most unique hat member I've talked to. Usually and I love the moms, usually it's the moms with the kids and it's something I can relate to, but you're coming from kind of a different walk of life. And I just love it that we kind of bring together all these different faces and all these different walks of life. And that's what unites us as homeopathy. And so I love that. Very good. All right. Well, we'll have to email about biodynamic stuff because I'm new to it. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Christopher, for being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'll go ahead and turn your camera off, and then Chris. Okay, I hope you guys really enjoyed listening to our hat member, and I just want to remind you that we do have an awesome coupon, a special offer from WHAg, Whole Health Agriculture. You can do AFHC-50, and that'll give you 50 pounds off of their course, which is approximately $64. We have 2 foundation courses. The first one is called Foundation Course in Farm Homeopathy and Foundation Course in Pet Homeopathy. So, awesome 2 courses. So it really applies to wherever you live, whatever kind of animals you have. I'm excited about doing these courses myself and learning more about how to care for my animals. And then congratulations, Carol Sharp. You are going to be winning our day 4 raffle. We actually drew this on Thursday, right before we went and streamed this live for you guys. So we're excited for you guys. We would love for you to be able to donate to us. We are just barely past $12,000 towards our $45,000 goal. Please do help us reach this goal. It's very important to us. We so appreciate your donations. We hate to ask, but we know that we can't do this without getting donations to support our work. And so we're so, so thankful for you. One of the ways that you can also support us is actually becoming a member of our Bear Pack. And so if you just go to homeopathychoice.org under donate, you're going to see that you have an option to be a member of a Bear Pack. To be a member of the Bear Pack, you basically donate $25 or more for us a month. And then we are able to kind of anticipate that donation, count on it every month as we do our work. And I have to say, our Bear Pack and our hat team, they are very precious, near and dear to our hearts. We love them because they are what has brought us to this point, and they're going to help us keep moving forward. So we are so thankful for everything that our members of our Bear Pack do. So please consider joining if you're not a member already. It helps so much more than you can imagine. And don't forget that we do have, you got to hear one of our hat members. We do have our hat team available right now for you to join. Just go to homeopathychoice.org/homeopathy-action-team. And then you can join our homeopathy action team. We only open this a few times a year. We do need different people we do need some states that don't have a lot of representation yet. We would love to get some state captains. You can find the states that need state captains on that webpage. So please do consider joining the homeopathy action team. Them together with our Bear Pack, they are the foundation of our organization. And we are so thankful for everyone who hears the call, hears the sound of my voice, and just knows, okay, I need to do something to help, because Americans for Homeopathy Choice is doing all we can to really ensure your access to these medicines long term. Okay, let's get back to the interview with Jackie and Chris. Jackie, come on back. Jackie, what is your last name? I'm blanking on it.
It's a mouthful, I'm afraid. It's Pierce-Dickens.
That's right. That's why I don't know it very well. But I see it. I remember it in my email, but yes, Pierce-Dickens. Okay. Well, very good. Well, let's go on to another scenario. We've kind of covered the emotional shock and emotional stress, which I think is fantastic. And we kind of touched in that last interview, we discussed briefly plants. And so there's a whole, we're going to be doing a session all on plants, and because plants go through their stresses and their, so it's fantastic. So anyways, okay, what's next?
So I mean, just following on in terms of looking at the challenges we get, when we looked at some of the common ones so far, we briefly mentioned the word parasites, which, as you say, can be a whole thing in its own right, and it's complex. It's not that there is necessarily a substitute for the commercial wormer by just giving a homeopathic remedy. And if you just step back a couple of steps and take the overview of it, you'll find that you can start to create strategies which will minimize your problems with parasites. And there can be certain remedies that come up commonly, and other ones you have to get a bit creative about. So the classic scenario we'll always look at with parasites, whatever the species, whatever the type of parasite, is the idea there's a balance between the vitality of the parasite coming in, the vitality of the host. And if the host vitality is high, then a parasite doesn't tend to take hold. Mm-hmm. If the host vitality is down for whatever reason, then the parasite can take hold and overwhelm and then further weaken the host. So that's our little parasite story. So with that understanding, if you have a parasite problem or a worry about a potential parasite problem, you can start creating appropriate strategies. So you're doing this on several levels. Certainly get your husbandry working well, because the better you do the husbandry, the better it's going to work. Next, then look at what can you do to then minimize the potential challenge from the parasite. So if you know your husbandry and you know the life cycle of that particular parasite, you can find ways to weaken that life cycle. So the classic one being that pasture rotation is really important with livestock. So if you're doing that appropriately, you won't get the same build-up of worms in the environment. With the fleas that you mentioned for your dogs and your cats, then if you know how to manage the household, do the hoovering, do the changing of bedding and things, again, you minimize the number of fleas in the environment. So that's the ones that are kind of weakening the potential parasite coming in. Then you want to do everything you can to big up the host so that its vital force is good and strong. And then, again, good husbandry, good diet, good management goes a long way towards that. Choosing specific remedies that help it for anything will be useful. So even if it's, I don't know, has a knock and a fall and you give it arnica for that, or an upset tummy and you're giving it maybe some arsenicum for that, or whatever it might be, anything you're doing that's educating the vital force will make that vital force overall stronger, even before you get to looking at the parasites. Mm-hmm. Then when it comes to the parasites, then you can look at specific remedies that might be relevant for the type of thing that's going on. So fleas, you mentioned, that's like a puncture wound going in, so Leiden became a useful remedy with that. We might have other things like, liver fluke that you get in cattle, where the liver gets damaged. So you put liver support remedies in because that's relevant for that. So you can do all those things. With the worms, we know there's a combination of different remedies which are useful for managing worm parasites. Now, these are borrowed from the human world. And if you look in any repertory or Materia Medica, you'll find the same old names come up again and again. And many of the UK pharmacies have put a little combination of those remedies together, and they work really nicely. For a long while, I was quite skeptical, wasn't quite sure whether they work or not, until I spoke to a chicken farmer who happened to be a biodynamic chicken farmer, and they really wanted to avoid the chemicals. And what they noticed is their chicken egg production had started going down. They weren't laying so many eggs. They did some investigation. They took some feces, they examined that, and they found there's a high burden of parasites. So rather than reaching for the chemical, what they chose to do is they put that combination remedy into the drinking water to treat the hens. And then what they found is two things. One, the egg production of the hens went back up again. They started producing more eggs. And then two, when they re-examined the feces, the level of the parasite burden had gone down. So I woke up to that. I thought, well, actually, it's doing something. There's something to just shift it. What we find generally is this combination of these different approaches that you're using to strategize what's going on. That means you end up with less of a parasite burden rather than one remedy instead of one chemical.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think that's where people have to accept is that homeopathy is never going to be a replacement for big pharma. We have to be very careful in homeopathy. And I'm going to say this thing that I say sometimes it's kind of edgy, but we cannot defile homeopathy by applying the big pharma principles to homeopathy. Like you just said, take this chemical or take this remedy or combination of remedies instead of this chemical. That's really bringing this pedestrian, caveman view of health that is espoused by big pharma and applying it to homeopathic medicines. And the moment we do that, we ruin the whole opportunity. And so if you're not willing, like pasture rotation, if you're new to that idea, that's where you're moving one animal from one paddock to the next. And so we're doing that every single day. We have a herd of like about 10 cows, a whole herd of 10 cows. They're actually not my cows. There's someone is putting them here, and I said that's fine. And so we're rotating. But they wanted to put them on my pasture, like just let them roam. Like no. If we're gonna have cows on my property, I will rotate them for you every single day and build up my pasture. Well, what happens is they leave behind their parasites. And then if you can, and we don't have chickens on our property yet, if you can rotate the chickens behind the cattle 3 days after, 3 days is the magic number after, because you're letting the manure kind of rest there for a few days. And then when the chickens get there, now they have something to do. And the parasites that affect the cattle don't affect the chickens. And so there's this whole rotation of different animals that you can put through. So if you're going to ignore that reality, and all you want is just to write down this combination remedy that I hope you're going to give us about for parasites that can be useful, you're not going to get the same results. That's just the bottom line. So.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly correct. Yeah. The combination, different pharmacists have different ones. I mean, I can't tell you the exact remedies. Sina definitely comes into it, and Felix Mass. I think Nat Sulf is put in there. Jackie, do you know any other ones specifically for the
well, those three are definitely would be my top. And then I'd be looking at silica as well, because of course silica is number one for removing foreign bodies, foreign entities, and silica is almost specific for tape. And then I think on top of that, you need to be thinking as well, because as Chris says, you do have to sort of think about all of it. So you want that gut to be as inhospitable as possible. So you'll be looking at some herbs, which are absolutely brilliant, but you do have to check with herbs, because you can't just go willy-nilly giving herbs to animals, because some can be poisonous. So you do have to check. But there's some great herbal remedies out there as well. We've got a farmer who grinds up pumpkin seeds into his mix, and if you just bear with me 1 second, I will look up on our website exactly what he does, and maybe you could send it out to your viewers afterwards.
While
Okay.
you're doing that, just say a quick word about herbs. Herbs can work in many, many different ways, and they vary from bits of the world to bits of the world. So within your locality, within the US, you'll probably be familiar with some of the local herbs, which have got a good reputation. So if you speak to a good herbalist in your area, you'll find out which worm appropriate herbs might be useful. And they work in two different ways, really. One, you can give them internally to then help improve the vitality and the digestive system and so forth. And then secondly, you can have them within the pasture. And there's a whole other way of looking at things. You create what's called a medicine paddock. And within a medicine paddock, you grow selectively plants that are known to have medicinal properties. And then you allow the livestock to have access to these paddocks from time to time as part of their grazing. And they'll choose which ones that they want to eat. And that could be part of their process of improving things.
Well,
we also...
I was just going to say there's a really wonderful website. It's called Strictly Medicinal Seeds, and that's a really great place to get seeds to do this medicine paddock. I've actually ordered a lot of different. I mean, I think I spent $100 on seeds because I'm working on doing that, and so I think that's really fantastic. But obviously research your area, research your animal, and see what's good. But there's, like, for chickens, there's really fantastic articles on what to plant and what to put out there for your animals to have access to that. So that's fantastic. Now, real quick, you said Cinna Felix Mass, like the bowel nosode Felix, FELIX.
I think it's a male shield fern. I think it is. Now, bear with me. I'll just look it up in Materia Medica a second.
Yeah, FELIX.
Yeah, Felix. Yeah.
Felix. Okay, mass.
Yeah.
And so actually, Jackie, you just gave me here an article that we'll include in the show notes. It's all about homeopathy for parasites from WHAg.
Yeah, and that's one of the free documents that our pro members get. And there's also a little, I'll just do another one here that you can send out for. This comes with a, which is a really nice little useful document for anybody, really. It's the top 12 remedies that you'd use in livestock or any animal, because of course homeopathy isn't species specific, but this one's livestock focused, so it'd be helpful.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I just downloaded that one too, so we'll make sure we'll include it in the show notes. So we've only got about 15 more minutes left. What else, guys?
One really crucial area to be aware of is the use of homeopathic nosodes. For those of you who are not familiar with these are homeopathic remedies made from disease material itself. And within the human world, there are a few nosodes we're familiar with, tuberculinum, for example, serinum is another one, and so on. And we don't use them extensively within human homeopathy, compared to on the farm, where we use them all over the place. Very, very useful for many different scenarios. Basically, you can look at any particular infectious disease scenario and you can create a nosode for that particular infectious disease, and you can use it in a homeopathic form, and you can use it preventatively, which is how we encourage it, or occasionally use it as part of a treatment program. I'll give you a few examples. In sheep, there's a condition called ORF, O-R-F. It's a virus infection, gives really nasty sort of ulcerating pustules on the udder of the ewe, on the teat, and also on the mouth parts of the lamb. So the combination of those things, the poor lamb can't actually suckle properly, and the mother doesn't want the lamb to suckle, and it can lead to real sorts of problems. So you want to avoid getting that if you possibly can. There are conventional approaches, but most farmers, in my experience, don't find they work as well as they want them to, compared to using a homeopathic nosode at the beginning of the season, usually a 30C potency given a few times in a row over a number of weeks. They'll find they just don't tend to get the same numbers of animals going down with ORF compared to if they weren't using that. Another example, in cattle, is a diarrhea problem called rotavirus, the well-known type of virus diarrhea that cattle can be prone to, particularly calves. And again, farmers who use the rotavirus nosode consistently find they get a much, much lower level of this rotavirus infection, and they subsequently don't get the diarrhea problems that would then cause. Another quick diarrhea one, coccidiosis, which you can get in many different species. And Yeah, chickens definitely get it. I have less experience of the use of nosode in chickens, but definitely in cattle. The calves, again, if you give the nosode on a regular weekly basis through the growing period, then that significantly improves their overall resilience. They don't tend to go down with the problems. So I'll just pause for breath there to say that really with any disease problem, you look at what have you got in front of you. So some level of diagnostics is useful, and you might need to get your veterinary practice to get involved with that, or you might be sufficiently experienced to know what's going on. So you kind of name the disease. You start to understand all the ins and outs, the technical side of what's happening with the disease. If you can adjust your husbandry accordingly, then that's appropriate. And as I say, if it's an infectious agent, you can have a nosode incorporated part of the strategy, and potentially other remedies that's going to support the organs that might get affected, or the potentially expected patterns of diarrhea or patterns of cough or patterns of skin ailments they're going to get. And if you do that overall package of management, you get way less problems compared to if you didn't.
That's right. That's right. Very good. And then, and where do we find these nosodes? Does it matter? Should we get like US based ones, or because I know Farm Support NZ, that's the website. Farm Support, is it .nz?
That's Tracy Simpson's, yeah. So farm services, I think it is, isn't it?
That's right.
NZ. So that's Tracy, who we work very closely with. Yeah, but I mean,
used to be owned by Tinica, right? And then she retired and sold it to Tracy.
Yeah, so Tracy Simpson bought the business from Tinica. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's very knowledgeable because she's a dairy farmer herself. So.
Yeah. Any good homeopathic pharmacy which allows you to export remedies, say from the UK into the US, they will have their list of nosodes, which that they'll know whether it's appropriate to then sort of send them out to the US or otherwise. Occasionally you have legislation for particular countries around the world, and we always advise people internationally just to check it's appropriate to do that, because if the customs don't like what you're trying to import, that they reject it. Equally, we're talking about the ability to deal with these sorts of situations. You can make such things yourself. There are ways of making your own homeopathic remedies. I've had to go with that with plants. You mentioned plants earlier on. You can take a given, a plant leaf with a particular parasite problem with it, and you can take that leaf and then you can turn that into a homeopathic remedy, which you can then use back on the plants to then minimize the tendency to get that disease. And a real simple way of doing that is to get an ordinary sort of bottle, and then you take your leaf that's diseased, you crush it up into a little mush, and you put it in there with a little bit of liquid at the bottom, usually water, and then you give that a jolly good shake up first. You then get rid of most of it and just leave a little bit of the water in there, and then you add another small amount of water. You're roughly aiming to get a 1 in 100 dilution. So if you'd started off with, I'm going to do it in milliliters here because that's what I'm used to. If you started off with 100 milliliters that you were using to dilute, and you reduce that down to 1 milliliter that you got left over, and then you top it up with fresh 99, you got 100 again. You give that a jolly good shake. That's kind of 1 in 100. Again, you pour off your 99, you leave a mil left in there. You add in another 99, you give it a good shake. And within a fairly short period of time, you can use methodology, just using one bottle, you can go through a dilution and succussion process and end up with a 30C potency. It takes a bit of effort, but you can do your own homemade version of that. Now, if you're trying to deal with your different plant parasite problems, you could do that selectively for all the different things that you think are parasite orientated and make your own remedy. And then again, you could spray that back onto the plants for the way of dealing with it.
I've done that myself. When I was living in Texas, we had this huge leaf cutter ant problem. They're the ants that carry the little leaf on their back, and oh my gosh, they were going to haul away all of my alfalfa for my cow. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so we actually did two things, very clever. First thing is I was able to make a little nosode out of the ants themselves, and I sprayed them all over the property. And then I did this other thing that I think is genius. We also have fire ants in Texas, right? So I would take a shovel full of fire ants and I would dump it on the mound of the leaf cutter ants, which really stressed out the leaf cutter ants. And I just kept doing it a few times a day, every time I walked by, because the poor little, not poor little, but the little fire ants would build up their mound again. Like, okay. And then I'd take a shovel full and I'd quickly dump it on the leaf cutter ants. They just left. They were like, this is a horrible place to make home. We do not want to be here. And the fire ants unfortunately did not leave. I thought maybe they would dislike the environment as well, but I just poured boiling water on them after, and then they were gone as well. But anyways, yeah, so that was that. But I did that no-sode, and I don't know, because I did both things. I don't know exactly which combination of which helped, but it worked out pretty well in the end.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really important point there, that we don't have to know exactly what it was that made the difference. As our life evolved, you might get more elegant about being certain it was just this or just that. But often it's the combination of things, combination of husbandry and management, where you're changing the environment which is out of favour of the thing that you didn't want, and encouraging the favour of the thing you do want. So you're physically doing that, and then you're putting remedies as well, which will again discourage the parasite or the challenge, but then maybe also put other remedies in which improve the vitality of the plant. And it's a combination of all these different bits all around. Whether it's plants or whether it's livestock, again, you can use that same approach where you intelligently look at what you're attempting to do. And we mentioned earlier on about confusing the vital force, and we don't see it that way, but you can definitely confuse the person, you can confuse the practitioner, or you can confuse the livestock owner. And that's why having a map, having a model about what you're attempting to achieve is so useful. If you set out in writing what your strategy is and have marker points where you can measure the progress, you'll feel much more in charge of what's going on than otherwise.
That's right. Well, very good. All right. Well, any closing thoughts as we kind of finish up here?
One more quick thing to mention is that don't forget that animals are very similar to people. And so any of your routine first aid remedies you might use in your household for your family, be that for bangs and sprains and injuries, or be it for upset tummies, or be it for coughs and sneezes, the remedy choice is very much the same. So yeah, you're still treating it. So it's rather than preventing it and building resistance, you're still treating it. So all your first aid books you might have for family homeopathy, you can probably borrow those principles and to your animals and to your livestock. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is that animals also have kind of a character and a constitution. And if you've been working over a period of time and you start to spot certain character traits, and then you decide that you're going to use this remedy on more of a constitutional basis and you get an improvement, you can keep a note in your records, in your journal, to know that animal goes well on that particular remedy when given in that constitutional way. And a lot of our farmers find that they could be treating their animals to deal with a crisis problem, and then if they follow up with a remedy that matches it more constitutionally, they often find they get a more comprehensive cure going on, and the animal continues to be healthier on a long-term basis. So just to remember to work in that particular way.
I think we've lost Paula.
I'm just omitting somebody. I'm hoping it's her one again. Let's see if it worked. Still recording, so yeah.
There she is.
Tell her she's muted.
You're muted, Paula.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. My laptop just completely died, but the recording is on the cloud, so we're okay. But I lost you. What were you just saying there at the very end?
Where did you lose me? And I'll repeat it.
I knew a second ago. What were you talking about?
I was talking about the use of a family homeopathy book or a family homeopathy kit, and it's just the same whether you use it for your family or whether you use it for your pets or for your livestock. If you apply the principles well, it can be very, very useful. Then the next thing I was going to say is about recognizing that if you start to spot patterns of constitution and the character and the behavior of the animal, if you can see that and then you choose to use a remedy on a constitutional basis when you're treating it, then that often reinforces all the work you've been doing with the acute management. So a lot of our farmers find that they'll treat the acute problem, they get over the acute, it improves a bit, but then they add in something more constitutional, and that improves it even further. That improves its overall resilience, and it's less likely to get the disease problem in the future. So
what I would love to see is a book, so maybe get writing, Chris, but I would love to see a book that looks at constitutional types based on the breed, because there is that book, Homeopathy for the Herd. Is it the book by Schaefer? And he talks about, I think that's the one, he talks about how like Jersey cows tend to be more pulsatilla, whereas these other breed of cows tend to be a little bit different. And you're absolutely right. Looking at them more constitutionally, I had a cow once that was having these issues, and I helped her with a more first aid remedy. But then she just wasn't getting fully better. And I was reading about pulsatilla and Jersey cows, and I thought, maybe she just needs to finish this off with a more constitutional remedy. And I gave her pulsatilla, and it worked beautifully, beautifully. Yeah, and so I would love to see a book about like, all the chickens and all the sheep and whatever, and maybe there's and maybe chickens are more simple, and I don't know. But no, that's not true, because they have their breeds, and they have their tendencies. Some are better at being broody, some are not, you know what I mean? And some mother better. And so it just, Yeah,
a word of caution there, Paula.
Okay.
We're very firmly of the belief that, homeopathy isn't horoscopes, and that people who try and get stuck in the finding the constitutional remedy that matches their child or their pet or their cow, and it's going to cure all their ailments. No, at the end of the day, these are out of balance states you're looking at, and you might find that, for instance, and I think you probably do, that somebody will resonate with a variety of remedies, some of which tend to be more polycrest / constitutional. So you could find, for instance, that a cow that does really well on calc carb could tend to throw belladonna acutes, for instance. But if they're not fixed states, please, we would caution, don't get stuck in that. It's tempting because it's so attractive to go, ooh, I recognize a pulsatilla, I recognize a silica, I recognize a sulfur, but we would say don't do that, because it leads you down paths that then makes people say homeopathy doesn't work, and that's such a shame, really.
Yeah, don't get fixed on it.
That's right.
Be aware of it. Always look at what's in front of you and how it's presenting, and again, all the experience you might have built up with homeopathy generally with people, again, apply those principles well. And another big thing of mine is make sure you keep good notes, because it's your observation skills as backed up by the notes you keep that will actually build your overall experience in what you do, and that's so vital.
That's right. If you don't keep records from one year to the next, it becomes very, very hard to track. And I think you're right, Jackie. Just finishing up on the constitutional, I think I have 2 children that have these beautiful constitutional remedies. This will tell you something. Everything, my daughter needs chamomilla, which tells you a little bit of her personality. But one of my boys and myself, like there's no way we've been on one remedy to the next with our homeopaths to the next, and so it's just and it is interesting though. My daughter and my son, who have true constitutional remedies that have lasted years with them, they're my healthiest. And my son and I are the ones that have been the most medicated before we found homeopathy. And I think that's, interesting. I think a lot of us are very chronically sick. And I think to get to the constitutional, you really need to be kind of at a healthy state to maintain health, So anyways, that's just kind of a little side note. Okay, Chris, go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, it's slightly backwards actually, and really important. So with any given farm, mostly you have a big cycle of life, and always at somewhere along that cycle of life, there's a reproductive process. So to get to understand your birth remedies and your reproductive remedies is a really useful thing to do. And there's some great books out there around that, which are written about human reproduction and human birth process. So if you get to learn those remedies really well and create yourself a birthing kit, you'll find that's extremely useful for a key part within the whole cycle that is that farm. If you can see when birth's going to be for whatever the species is dealing with, and be ready with good remedies, that will prevent a lot of problems ever evolving really well. That's about it really.
Yeah, and then just finally, I would say that our website, which is learning.wholehealthag.org, has got masses of free information for farmers and pet owners, really, and anybody's welcome to join it. You've got everything on there. You'll find a whole therapeutics index. We've got loads of different courses, including our 2 foundation courses. And Paula, I will send you a discount code for our foundation courses for your members. But you don't have to spend a penny. You can go on there, join as a basic member, and get masses of free information and case studies and tips and remedy information, and we're adding to it all the time. So it's a bit of a treasure trove of animal homeopathy and herbs as well. We don't just stop at homeopathy. We do herbs, fermented foods, all sorts of things.
I've been on your website. I've attended some of your classes. And okay, look, my computer's back on, and it's really fantastic. And so anyways, yeah, I think it's great. So thank you so much, Chris Aukland, Jackie Pierce-Dickens, and Christopher Hahn. Thank you so much, all of you guys, for being here. It's been so wonderful. I really enjoy spending time with you all. And we'll be back for the next Pledge Drive episode tomorrow. So thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this session. Remember, you can become a member of the Homeopathy Action Team right now, homeopathychoice.org/homeopathy-action-team. And then please do consider donating to us. Just go to our website, homeopathychoice.org, become a member of the Bear Path, do a one-time donation. Closing up this pledge drive, and we hope you've been enjoying this show. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow when I come on live with Harula Batista.